UFC 306 takes place this weekend, and the main event is Sean O'Malley taking on Dvalishvili. This card is honestly not very good, but I still want to go over every fight on the card, give you my predictions and break down the fights, and explain to you why I'm picking who I'm picking. Now, this fight card only has about 10 fights, and that's very weird. I know that Dana White spent like $20 billion on this event. I think it was $16 million, and now they don't even know how it's going to go because they've spent so much money on it and the ticket prices are ridiculous and not selling because the card is honestly so weak. We got an awesome main event, co-main event is cool, and the featured fight's incredible, but the rest of this card's not very good. It's Mexican Independence Day. I like the theme of it, but why is it taking place in Vegas if that's the case? I'm ranting already. I'm sorry. We're going to get into the fights, starting with the early prelim opener of Raul Rosas Jr. versus Aori Chileng. Now, Raul is still a top prospect in the UFC. I think he's got a bright future ahead of him. He lost, but it was to Christian Rodriguez, who's the prospect destroyer. Of course, this is only when he misses weight against them. No, sorry. I think this is a good matchup for Raul. There is some danger. Aori has some good finishing potential. I don't like the matchup for him against Rosas, though. He doesn't have a great grappling background in his previous fights, and Rosas has shown how good he can be in that department. I think Raul gets this one done by like a second-round submission. Aori is an experienced fighter for sure, but I think he has far too many ups and downs in his career to have the momentum to beat someone like Rosas, and I think the grappling is going to be too much. I'm going Raul by like second round submission. Then we got Edgar Chairez versus Joshua Van. Joshua Van is still a good fighter. The biggest red flag for me is that he's turning around so quick for this one after being knocked out by Charles Johnson. He's obviously hungry to get back in there and redeem his last loss, and I think he can. I don't think Chairez is the type of fighter to be able to stop him. He has some decent grappling, some submission wins in his past, but I think Van is levels above him, honestly, so I'm gonna go with Joshua Van probably by a decision just because it's lower weight class. That's another problem with this card, I gotta be so real. It's a very Mexican-heavy theme, and, Mexican people tend to be on the shorter side, so we don't have a fight over lightweight on this card, which is yikes. Moving on. Yasmin Jarecki versus Caitlin Souza. Yasmin looks way more technical and like an all-around better fighter than Caitlin Souza. She has some decent little wins on her resume. She has a respectful record. She's a decent women's MMA fighter, and I don't think she'll reach the potential she once showed she might have, but I don't think she's the type to lose this one to Souza. Souza's pretty average for a WMMA fighter. Doesn't look very good in all of her fights. I'm sorry. Then again, women's MMA is so hard to predict. It's like a coin toss. So with a grain of salt, I'm going Yasmin Jarecki by decision. Then we have Manuel Torres versus Ignacio Bahamondes. This is actually a pretty fire fight. Definitely underrated on this card. I think Manuel Torres has looked absolutely insane as of late. He's killing everyone. He has really good pressure. He's insanely strong. I think Bahamondes is a tough fight for him. He hasn't looked as good in some of his fights as Torres has to me, though. So I'm going to go Manuel Torres in this one, probably by decision. I think he's going to have too much pressure. I think he's going to be way too strong. I think he's going to kind of toss him around and get a decision win. Then we have Irene Aldana taking on Norma Dumont. I have a hard time picking Irene Aldana simply because of her fight against Amanda Nunes all those years ago, but this is actually quite a tough fight to pick. Like I said, women's MMA is so hard to predict. It feels like such a coin toss. Aldana is a pretty decent fighter. She holds her own against some good, tough opponents. She has a lot of power. I think that this one will go to decision likely, and if it's close, I think they're going to give it to Dumont, and the reason I say that is because I think they want to push her since she's a more, fresh name at the top of the division. It's a really tough pick and not my most confident one. I'd probably say this is my least confident pick on the whole card, but I am banking on this to go to decision, and if it does and it's close, I think they're going to give it to Norma. So I'm going Norma Dumont by decision for so many big reasons. Ronaldo Rodriguez versus O'Day Osborne. This is a main card fight on a pay-per-view in 2024. That's fantastic. Not only just a pay-per-view, but a once-in-a-lifetime pay-per-view. I hope it's once in a lifetime because of how bad it is. Ronaldo Rodriguez is a decent little fighter. He has some really good finishing potential. O'Day Osborne is so mid. He loses quite a bit, isn't very consistent. Rodriguez has shown some good fight history. We've seen O'Day finish at flyweight quite a bit, which is just not good. I think this is a Rodriguez win, likely by submission in round 1 or 2. We've seen O'Day get submitted before, and he has problems in that department. And Rodriguez, I believe, just won his last fight by submission. So, yeah, I'm going with him by submission, round 1 or 2. Then we got Daniel Zellhuber versus Esteban Ribovic. Yep, again, this is a main card fight on the pay-per-view. This is insane. Yeah, it's a good fight, don't get me wrong. It's actually a really good fight. It's just not main card pay-per-view worthy, let alone on the Sphere, a once-in-a-lifetime card. This card blows, dude. But anyways, Ribovic is quite dangerous, actually, and Zellhuber has been cracked in his past fights. They're both very exciting upcoming prospects, but I think Zellhuber has got this one. He's insanely talented. He's looked insanely good lately. Ribovic is definitely a good fighter, fast, technical, all around good, but I don't think he has what it takes to finish Zellhuber in this fight, and I think we might see a brief star-making performance in this fight. Zellhuber is a really good fighter, and I think he's going to show it in this fight. I'm going Daniel Zellhuber to win a decision, probably with good, precise, accurate striking. Here's where the event really starts, because moving on we have Brian Ortega taking on Diego Lopez. This one's terrifying to me because I'm a major Diego Lopez fan. He's a top 5 favorite fighter for me right now. Ortega's insanely good. He's a gatekeeper to the belt, essentially. He breaks his beak. He comes back. He's the Eagle. He wins a few top-ranked fights, and he gets 50-45 in his title fights. It's how it goes. It's tough being Brian Ortega, fumbling titles and fumbling women, like Tracy Cortez. But I do think this is the time we see him not able to pass a top-ranked guy. Lopez is ranked only like 11th, but he is a much better fighter than that. He's a killer, especially early on. If this was a 5-round fight, I'd be even more nervous than I already am. But I think at worst, he wins the first 2 rounds and gets a 29-28 decision due to his dominance in early rounds. I know Ige looked pretty good against Lopez, and especially in that 3rd round. And that might not scream like a good title contender to you. But Danny Ige's good. He's underrated. He doesn't get finished, and the circumstances Lopez went through for that fight was nuts. He cut and gained weight like 100 times. His opponents were switched multiple times, and it was on short notice to begin with. I think seeing a full training camp, healthy, strong Diego Lopez is going to be much different. Ortega's dangerous. He's a good striker, but I don't see him finishing Lopez by KO. His ground game is where it's the most interesting for me. I think Lopez needs to avoid the ground game of Ortega. If it gets there, I think he'll be okay. He has a pretty decent ground game. He isn't bad by any means, but I just think he's going to be able to keep it on the feet and crack him early on, rock him all over the place. Look cleaner, land more. I think Lopez is going to get this one done. Probably by a decision, just due to Ortega's will to not quit. We've seen him get cracked a lot in big fights, and he's able to withstand it. He did just get dropped against Yair in his last fight, so maybe we'll see his chin crack. But for the safe bet, I am going to go with Diego Lopez by decision. In the co-main event, we have the trilogy between Alexa Grasso and Valentina Shevchenko. This is a really tough one to pick. Alexa, of course, won the first fight by submission after she was losing, and then in the second fight, it was ruled a draw in a very close fight that I think Valentina probably should have won. But this has similar circumstances to their second fight, sorry. This is for a Mexican audience, and that's exactly what happened when they fought last. Even Valentina was complaining about that. And that shows me if this goes to decision, as I do think it will, they probably will just give it to Alexa if it's close. I do think Alexa is going to show improvements. Valentina's getting older. She's not going to improve as much as someone like Alexa who's younger. She was dominant for a while, but I think it's Grasso's turn. I think she's going to get it done by a much more clear decision, probably like a 3-2, maybe 4-1 decision. I don't think it's going to be as controversial. I think Alexa's got this one in the bag. And we're already on to the main event. Sean O'Malley defending his belt against Merab Dvalishvili. This fight has me nervous. I'm going to be real. I'm a major fanboy of Sean O'Malley. He's the most entertaining fighter in the cage, and regardless of what you think of his fan base and his personality outside of it, he is the most entertaining striker in the UFC, and he's my favorite fighter right now. Merab's a dangerous matchup, kind of a nightmare matchup for either one of these guys here. We have so many questions about O'Malley's wrestling. We haven't seen it quite as much as we thought we would, especially after the Aljo fight. I don't see Merab trying to strike with Sean as much as Aljo did. I think he's going to try to shoot 100 takedowns. I do think O'Malley will be able to stop a lot of the grappling. Merab's biggest weapon is his cardio, and there's a chance he actually has staph infection in this fight, and if that's the case, he's truly doomed. But I see no world where he finishes O'Malley, which gives Sean 25 minutes to land one shot. We've seen Merab get caught by guys like Marlon Moraes, and even Henry Cejudo in his last fight, and you just can't do that against Sean O'Malley. I think he's too quick, too accurate, too perfect on the feet to not catch Merab at least once in the 25 minutes, and I think it's going to set up a big fight with Umar in the future. I'm going O'Malley by a second round knockout. I do think Merab is going to be a little smarter than Aljo, but something really telling to me is that Aljo spams takedowns, and he couldn't do that against O'Malley, whether it was trying to find the range and the timing for it or not. And even when he did shoot, he couldn't get it. And Merab, I know he's a great grappler. He's great at not getting takedowns. His pressure is just what gets him the job done. And I actually like Merab. I think he's really funny. I think his fight style, even though it looks really boring, is pretty entertaining when you think about how much he's just going for it, and he never slows down. But if he has staff, he's going to slow down. I think O'Malley's going to crack him. I think he's going to get it done. Early round knockout for Sean O'Malley. Those are my picks for UFC 306 taking place this weekend. Let me know if you agree with my picks. Let me know what you disagree with. Do you have any bold predictions for this card? Who are you rooting for? Let me know in the comments below. I'm going to try to be more active on this channel. Real life predictions, real life breakdowns, as well as doing my own universe mode within UFC 5. Those videos are a little hard to get to, but I do make them when I can. So yeah, I'm just going to keep pumping out the content, grow this channel. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see y'all later. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Peace.